Kang Minho stood in the center of the courtroom with metal chains around his wrists and ankles. The chains were heavy and cold against his skin. Above him stretched a dome made of clear crystal that showed the stars beyond. 12 alien judges sat in floating chairs arranged in a circle around him. Their faces looked nothing like human faces. Some had tentacles instead of hair. Others had eyes that glowed like small suns. One judge looked like a walking tree with bark for skin. Thus, lead judge was tall and thin with blue skin that seemed to shine in the courtroom lights. Its voice sounded like metal scraping against stone when it spoke. Kang Minho of the planet Earth, you stand accused of violating the restricted zone accords. You entered the Forbidden Nebula without permission. You removed artifacts that belong to the Galactic Heritage Foundation. How do you answer these charges? Minho lifted his head and looked directly at the blue-skinned judge. I never went into any forbidden zone. I was doing salvage work in the Outer Rim like I always do. I found some old metal pieces floating in space. Nobody told me they were special. Nobody told me I could not take them. The judge made a sound, like grinding gears. The evidence shows your ship was detected inside the Forbidden Nebula. The artifacts you took are ancient technology that could damage the balance of power in our galaxy. Your ignorance is not a defense. Minho felt anger rise in his chest, but he kept his voice calm. I have been a salvage operator for 15 years. I know every law about what I can and cannot take. I always check the restricted zone maps before I go anywhere. I was outside the nebula when I found those pieces. Another judge spoke up. This one looked like a giant insect with wings that buzzed when it moved. Human testimony is not reliable. Your species is known for deception and violence. The sensor logs from our patrol ships do not lie. Then your sensor logs are wrong, Minho said. The insect judge's wings buzzed louder. You dare question the accuracy of hegemony technology? This proves your species lacks the wisdom to exist among civilized worlds. A third judge joined the conversation. This one had gray skin and no visible mouth. Its words came from somewhere inside its head. The council has already reviewed this case. The evidence is clear. The defendant's ship was inside the Forbidden Zone. The artifacts were in his cargo hold. These facts cannot be disputed. Minho looked around the circle of judges. He could see in their alien faces that they had already decided his fate before the trial began. This was not about justice. This was about making an example of him. I want to see the sensor logs. I want to examine the evidence. I have the right to defend myself. The lead judge's blue skin grew brighter. Rights are granted to citizens of the galactic hegemony. Humans are provisional members at best. Your species joined our civilization only 50 years ago. You have not earned full rights yet. But your own laws say that all beings have the right to a fair trial, Minho said. You have received a fair trial, the tree-like judge said. Its voice sounded like wind through leaves. We have heard your testimony. We have examined the evidence. The verdict is clear. The lead judge raised one long arm. Kang Minho of Earth, this tribunal finds you guilty of violating the restricted zone accords. The penalty for this crime is life imprisonment in a maximum security facility. You will be transferred to Vorthak Prime immediately. Minho felt the blood drain from his face. He had heard stories about Vorthak Prime. It was the worst prison in the galaxy. Built inside the gravity well of a neutron star, it was designed to hold the most dangerous criminals in known space. No one had ever escaped from Vorthak Prime. Most prisoners died within the first year. This is not justice, Minho said. This is murder. The insect judge's wings buzzed with what might have been laughter. Humans are classified as a Class 15 Deathworld species. If any being can survive in Vorthak Prime, it would be one of your kind. Consider it a test of your species' famous adaptability. Two guards in powered armor stepped forward and grabbed Minho's arms. They were not human. They looked like walking tanks with glowing red eyes. Their grip was strong enough to crush his bones if they wanted to. They began to drag him toward a door that had opened in the courtroom wall. As they pulled him away, Minho heard the lead judge speaking to the other judges in a language he did not understand. But he caught a few words that made his blood run cold. The judge was saying something about problem solved and political embarrassment avoided. The guards dragged him through corridors filled with alien technology. The walls pulsed with soft light that changed colors as they walked. Other aliens stopped to stare at him as he passed. Some pointed at him and made sounds that might have been words. Others just watched with eyes that showed no emotion at all. They brought him to a small room with no windows. In the center of the room sat a metal pod that looked like a coffin with tubes and wires attached to it. One of the guards pushed a button on its armor, and the pod opened with a hiss of escaping gas. "Get in," the guard said. Its voice sounded like it came from the bottom of a deep well. Minho looked at the inside of the pod. It was lined with soft material that looked like it would mold itself to his body. There were tubes that would go into his arms and a mask that would cover his face. "How long will I be in there?" "Transport to Vorthak Prime takes 6 standard days," the guard said. "The pod will keep you alive and prevent you from moving. Escape is impossible." Minho climbed into the pod. The material did mold itself to his body, wrapping around him like a second skin. The guard attached the tubes to his arms and placed the mask over his face. Immediately, he felt a strange tingling sensation as the pod began to feed chemicals into his bloodstream. "Sleep well, human," the guard said. "When you wake up, you will wish you had died in this courtroom." The pod closed over him with a final hiss. Darkness surrounded him completely. The chemicals in his bloodstream made his thoughts slow and fuzzy. But even as consciousness slipped away, Minho held on to one clear thought. He was innocent. He had not broken any laws. Someone had set him up, and now they were sending him to die in the worst prison in the galaxy. As he drifted into artificial sleep, he could hear the vibrations of the transport ship starting its engines. Soon he would be traveling through space, toward a nightmare that few beings had survived. But Kang Minho was not like other beings. He was human. He came from a world where everything tried to kill you from the moment you were born. He had survived Earth. Maybe he could survive Vorthak Prime too. The last thing he felt before sleep took him completely was determination. He would survive. He would find out who had framed him, and someday, somehow, he would make them pay for what they had done to him. The aliens thought they were sending him to his death. They had no idea what they had really done. They had given a human time to think, time to plan, and time to get very angry. That was always a mistake. Minho woke up when the pod opened and cold air hit his face like a slap. The chemicals in his bloodstream made everything feel strange and distant. His arms and legs felt heavy and weak from 6 days of not moving. The mask came off his face, with a wet sucking sound, and he could smell the air of Vorthak Prime for the first time. It smelled like metal and sulfur and something else that reminded him of rotting meat. The gravity hit him as soon as he tried to sit up. It felt like someone had tied lead weights to every part of his body. The air was thick and hard to breathe. Most humans would have passed out immediately, but Minho had grown up in the deep mines of Earth, where the air was just as bad and the gravity was almost as strong. 2 new guards pulled him out of the pod and onto his feet. These guards looked different from the ones at the courthouse. They wore thick armor that covered their entire bodies, and their faces were hidden behind dark metal masks. Tubes connected their armor to breathing tanks on their backs. Even the guards needed help to survive in this place. "Move!" one of them said. Its voice came through a speaker in its mask and sounded flat and emotionless. They walked through corridors made of black metal that seemed to absorb light instead of reflecting. "Hit!" Other guards stood at regular intervals along the walls. All of them wore the same heavy armor and breathing equipment. None of them looked human, or even close to human. Through small windows in the walls, Minho could see space outside, but it was not normal space. Everything was twisted and bent by the massive gravity of the neutron star below them. Even the stars looked wrong. They came to a large room filled with processing equipment. Machines scanned Minho's body and took samples of his blood and skin. A computer voice spoke in a dozen different languages before settling on English. Species, human. Classification, Class 15, Deathworld. Threat level, unknown. Special requirements, none detected. One of the guards made a sound that might have been surprise. "No special requirements. Most prisoners need breathing assistance or gravity compensation or temperature regulation. What kind of world do you come from?" "Earth," Minho said. The guard was quiet for a moment. I have heard of Earth. They say it is a world where everything tries to kill you. I thought those were just stories. They are not stories, Minho said. They gave him prison clothes made of rough gray material and took away everything he had been wearing. The clothes were designed to fit many different body types, so they hung loose on his human frame. Then they led him deeper into the prison through more black corridors and past more guards in heavy armor. The gravity kept changing as they walked. Sometimes it felt normal, and sometimes it felt like he was being crushed by an invisible hand. The guards moved slowly and carefully, but Minho found he could adjust to the changes without much trouble. Growing up on Earth had taught him to deal with hostile environments. They brought him to a cell block that looked like a metal cave carved out of solid rock. The cells were small boxes with force field doors instead of metal bars. Inside each cell, Minho could see prisoners from dozens of different species. Some looked almost human. Others looked like nothing he had ever seen before. His cell was at the end of a long row. Inside was a metal bed, a small table, and a hole in the floor that served as a toilet. There was also another prisoner already in the cell. This one looked almost human except for gray skin and eyes that were completely black with no white parts at all. "Your new home," one of the guards said. "Try not to die too quickly. The paperwork is annoying." The force field door activated and the guards walked away. Minho looked around the small cell and then at his cellmate. The other prisoner was sitting on his bed reading something on a small device. "You must be the human," the cellmate said without looking up. "I am Roku. I was told you would be coming." "How did you know I was coming?" Roku finally looked up from his device. His completely black eyes were disturbing to look at, but his voice was calm and educated. "News travels fast in prison. A human being sentenced to Vorthak Prime is unusual. Most species consider your kind to be barely civilized barbarians. The fact that they sent you here instead of executing you immediately means someone wanted you to suffer." Minho sat down on his own bed. The metal was cold even through the prison clothes. "What did you do to end up here?" "I was a diplomat for the Alteran Republic," Roku said. "I was accused of war crimes during the border conflicts. I tried to prevent a massacre and ended up being blamed for causing it instead. Politics is a dangerous profession in our galaxy." "How long have you been here?" 3 years. Long enough to learn how this place works. Long enough to know that you will probably be dead within a week unless you listen to what I tell you." Roku put down his device and looked directly at Minho. "Vorthak Prime is not like other prisons. The guards do not care what happens to the prisoners as long as we do not escape. The real power here belongs to the gangs. If you want to survive, you need protection. Protection costs money or favors or blood." As if to prove his point, a loud alarm began to sound throughout the prison. All the lights changed from white to red, and the force field doors opened with a hiss. Prisoners began to emerge from their cells and gather in the corridors outside. "What is happening?" Minho asked. "Feeding time," Roku said. "Come. Stay close to me and do not talk to anyone unless I tell you to." They joined the crowd of prisoners moving through the corridors toward what Roku called the common area. Minho had never seen so many different alien species in one place. Some walked on 2 legs like humans. Others crawled on multiple limbs or floated through the air. A few looked like they were made of metal or crystal instead of flesh and bone. The common area was a huge room with tables and benches made of the same black metal as everything else in the prison. At one end was a counter where automated machines dispensed food. The food looked like gray paste and smelled even worse than the air in the prison. As they got in line for food, Minho noticed that the prisoners had arranged themselves into groups. Each group stayed away from the others, and there were clear areas between them that no one crossed. The tension in the room was so thick you could almost see it. "The big group near the far wall are Voss's people," Roku said quietly. "Voss calls himself the Render. He used to be a warlord before they caught him. His gang controls most of the protection rackets and smuggling operations. The smaller group by the window belongs to Hex Prime Unit 7. It is an artificial intelligence that was convicted of genocide. Its followers are mostly cyborgs and robots. They got their food and found an empty table away from the gang territories. The gray paste tasted as bad as it looked, but Minho ate it anyway. He had eaten worse things on Earth when times were hard. While they ate, Minho watched the other prisoners. He noticed that many of them had trouble with the changing gravity. When it increased suddenly, several aliens fell to their knees or collapsed completely. But the gravity changes did not bother Minho at all. Growing up in Earth's variable gravity fields had taught him to adjust automatically. Other prisoners noticed this too. He could see them pointing at him and talking in languages he did not understand. Some looked curious, others looked worried. A few looked hungry, like predators that had spotted potential prey. "They are talking about you," Roku said. "Word is spreading that the human does not need gravity compensation equipment. That makes you either very dangerous or very stupid. In a place like this, both can get you killed." After the meal, they returned to their cell. The force field doors closed again and the lights changed back to white. Roku sat on his bed and picked up his device again. "What is that thing?" Minho asked. "A datapad. It contains books and news from across the galaxy. Reading helps pass the time. It also helps me keep track of what is happening in the outside world. Information is power. Even in prison." Minho lay down on his metal bed and stared at the ceiling. The ceiling was made of the same black metal as everything else, but if he looked carefully, he could see tiny holes in it. Through those holes came the twisted light from the neutron star below them. It was like looking into the heart of a dying sun. "Roku," he said, "you said someone wanted me to suffer. What did you mean?" Roku was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was very soft. "I have been studying your case since I heard you were coming. The charges against you do not make sense. The evidence is too convenient. The sentence is too harsh for the crime. Someone with power wanted you here. The question is why?" "I do not know," Minho said. "I was just doing my job. I found some old metal in space and brought it back to Cell. I had no idea it was important." "What kind of old metal?" "Pieces of hull plating, some electronic components. Nothing special. The metal was strange, though. It had markings on it that looked almost like human writing, but older. Much older." Roku was quiet again. When he spoke this time, his voice was even softer. "Human writing? Are you sure?" "Pretty sure, but that is impossible. Humans only joined the galactic community 50 years ago. We never had interstellar travel before that." "Maybe someone did not want that fact to become common knowledge," Roku said. "Maybe someone was willing to destroy an innocent man to keep that secret safe." Minho felt cold despite the warm air in the cell. If Roku was right, then his imprisonment was not just about punishment. Word about the human who did not need special equipment spread through Vorthak Prime like fire through dry grass. Within 3 days, every prisoner and guard knew about Kang Minho. Some thought he was hiding his weakness to seem strong. Others believed he was some kind of enhanced soldier or genetic experiment. A few smart ones like Roku suspected the truth, that humans were just naturally tougher than anyone had realized. On his 4th day in prison, Minho got his first real test. He was walking back from the exercise yard when 3 prisoners blocked his path in a narrow corridor. They were all from different species, but they wore the same symbol on their prison clothes, a red circle with claws marks through it. Voss's gang. The leader was tall and thin with green skin and 4 arms. His name was Nex, and he had killed 17 beings before coming to Vorthak Prime. "Human," he said in accented English. "Voss wants to see you." "I am busy," Minho said. All 3 prisoners laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. "You do not understand," Nex said. "This is not a request. This is an order. Voss protects everyone in this prison who pays him. You need protection. The only question is whether you will pay willingly or if we will take payment from your corpse." Minho looked at the 3 prisoners blocking his way. Behind him, other inmates had stopped to watch. No one tried to help him. In a place like Vorthak Prime, everyone looked out for themselves first. "What if I do not want protection?" Minho asked. Nex's 4 arms moved in a gesture that was probably threatening on his homeworld. "Then you will learn why this prison has such a high death rate. Many accidents happen here. Equipment failures, gravity spikes, toxic air leaks. Voss's protection prevents these accidents from happening to his people. And if I refuse, then accidents start happening to you." Minho nodded as if he was thinking about it. Then he smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "I understand now. You want me to pay Voss so that his people will not try to kill me. But here is the problem with that plan. I am from Earth. On Earth, everything tries to kill you from the moment you are born. The air is poison, the water is acid, the plants eat meat, and the animals hunt in packs. The weather can freeze you solid or burn you to ash in the same day. The gravity changes without warning and can crush you flat if you are not ready for it. He took a step closer to Nex. The alien took a step back without thinking about it. So, when you threaten me with accidents and equipment failures and hostile environments, you're basically threatening me with a normal Tuesday on Earth. Do you understand what I am telling you? Nex's green skin had turned a lighter shade. You are bluffing. No world is that dangerous. Nothing could evolve under those conditions. Earth did not evolve us, Minho said. Earth forged us, like metal in a fire. And now you want to test how strong that metal is. One of the other prisoners, a furry creature with too many teeth, pulled out a sharpened piece of metal. Enough. Talk. Kill the human and take his belongings. The creature lunged at Minho with surprising speed, but Minho had been fighting for his life since he was old enough to walk. His reflexes were faster than anything the alien had encountered. He stepped aside and grabbed the creature's arm as it passed. Then he used the alien's own momentum to slam it into the metal wall hard enough to leave a dent. The second prisoner tried to attack while Minho was distracted. This one was bigger and stronger, but also slower. Minho ducked under its claws and punched it in what he hoped was a vulnerable spot. The prisoner doubled over and fell to the floor, gasping for air. Nex pulled out his own weapon, a small device that looked like it might be some kind of energy gun. But before he could use it, the gravity in the corridor suddenly increased to 8 times normal. All 3 of Voss's gang members collapsed under the crushing weight. Their bodies were not designed to handle such forces. Minho felt the increased gravity like a heavy blanket settling over him. It was uncomfortable but not impossible to bear. He had experienced worse during gravity storms on Earth. He walked over to where Nex was struggling to breathe under the crushing force. "This is what I mean," he said calmly. "You call this an accident. I call this Tuesday." The gravity returned to normal, and Nex's gang members slowly got back to their feet. They looked at Minho with new respect and quite a bit of fear. Without saying another word, they stumbled away down the corridor. The other prisoners who had been watching began to whisper among themselves. Some of them looked impressed. Others looked worried. A few looked like they were already making plans of their own. When Minho returned to his cell, Roku was waiting with his usual calm expression. "I heard about your encounter with Voss's people. You handled it well, but you have made things more complicated for yourself." "How so?" "Voss will not let this insult pass. He will send more people after you and they will be better prepared. But more importantly, you have shown the other prisoners that it is possible to resist the gangs. That makes you dangerous to the established order here." "Good," Minho said. "I never liked bullies anyway." Over the next few days, Minho's reputation continued to grow. He helped a small alien called Pip fix a broken air recycler in his cell. The alien was too weak to handle the heavy components, but Minho could work in the toxic fumes without protection. In return, Pip shared information about the prison's hidden passages and maintenance tunnels. He also befriended a group of prisoners who were too old or weak to protect themselves. They had been paying protection money to various gangs, but barely had enough resources to survive. Minho started walking with them to and from meals. His presence alone was enough to keep the gang members away. Word of these activities reached Voss quickly. The crime lord was not pleased that his protection rackets were being undermined by a single human. He decided to make an example that would remind everyone why his gang ruled the prison. The opportunity came during recreation time in the exercise yard. The yard was a large open space surrounded by force field walls. The gravity was kept at a constant 3 times Earth normal to make exercise more challenging. Most prisoners could barely walk under these conditions, but they were required to spend 2 hours there every day. Minho was doing push-ups in one corner of the yard when a shadow fell across him. He looked up to see a massive creature standing over him. It was at least 3 meters tall and covered in thick gray hide that looked like armor plating. Its arms were as thick as tree trunks and ended in claws that could tear through metal. "Human," the creature said in a voice like grinding stone. "I am Krenth, Voss has paid me to kill you slowly so that everyone can watch. He wants them to remember what happens to those who do not respect the natural order. Minho got to his feet and looked up at the giant creature. Around the exercise yard, other prisoners had stopped their activities to watch. Even the guards in their elevated positions seemed interested in what was about to happen. "Krenth," Minho said. "That is a strong name. What world are you from?" The creature seemed surprised by the question. "I am from Gorath Prime. It is a world of warriors and hunters. Only the strong survive there." "Sounds like a nice place," Minho said. "But let me ask you something. On your world, do the storms change the gravity while they are happening? Do the predators hunt in packs and use poison and work together to kill things much bigger than themselves? Does the very air you breathe try to dissolve your lungs?" Krenth's small eyes narrowed. "No. Gorath Prime is harsh but not impossible." "Then you have never really been tested," Minho said. "You have never had to fight for every breath and every step. You think you are strong because you survived on a world that merely wanted to challenge you. I am strong because I survived on a world that wanted me dead." Krenth roared and charged forward with his claws extended. He was fast for something so large, but Minho was faster. He rolled to the side and came up near one of the exercise machines, a metal bar that could be adjusted to different weights depending on the gravity. As Krenth turned to face him again, Minho grabbed the bar and yanked it free from its mounting. The bar was designed to be immovable under normal conditions, but the mounting bolts were not designed to handle the stress of human strength in high gravity. Krenth charged again. This time, Minho did not dodge. He planted his feet and swung the metal bar like a club. It connected with Krenth's skull with a sound like a bell being struck. The giant creature staggered backward, blood flowing from a cut on his forehead. "Impossible," Krenth growled. "You are too small, too weak." "Size is not everything," Minho said. "On Earth, the most dangerous predators are not the biggest ones. They are the smartest ones, the ones that use tools and work together and never give up." He swung the bar again, this time at Krenth's knees. The creature tried to dodge, but he was too slow and too stunned from the first hit. The bar connected and Krenth fell to the ground with a crash that shook the entire yard. Minho stood over the fallen giant with the metal bar in his hands. Around the yard, every prisoner and guard was staring at him in complete silence. A human had just defeated one of the most feared fighters in the prison, using nothing but improvised weapons and superior tactics. "Tell Voss," Minho said loudly, enough for everyone to hear, "that I do not need his protection. Tell him that any human who survived childhood on Earth does not fear anything he can send after me." 3 months after arriving at Vorthak Prime, Minho had changed everything about how the prison worked. It started small, with him helping weaker prisoners survive the daily challenges of toxic air and crushing gravity, but it grew into something much bigger when those prisoners began working together instead of fighting each other for scraps. The change was most visible in the lower levels of the prison. These were the worst areas where the gravity was strongest, and the air was most poisonous. Most prisoners avoided these levels completely, but Minho could work there safely, and he had discovered that the prison's waste disposal and recycling systems were located in those dangerous zones. Working with Pip and a few other technically minded prisoners, Minho had learned to salvage useful materials from the waste streams. They found metals that could be shaped into tools, chemicals that could be purified into medicine, and electronic components that could be rebuilt into communication devices. More importantly, they found food supplies that the guards had thrown away because they were past expiration dates that only mattered to alien biology. Roku had used his diplomatic connections to establish trade relationships with prisoners from different gangs. Information flowed through these networks faster than the guards could track. They learned about guard rotation schedules, about planned inspections, about which areas of the prison would have equipment failures and when. The most important discovery came when Minho found a way into the prison's central computer systems. The access point was in a maintenance tunnel filled with radiation that would kill most species in minutes. But humans had evolved on a world where background radiation was just another environmental hazard to deal with, using computer skills. He had learned during his salvage operations. Minho was able to access files that contained information about every prisoner in Vorthak Prime. What he found there changed everything he thought he knew about his situation. "Look at this," he said to Roku, showing him data on a small screen they had built from salvaged parts. My case file says I was caught with artifacts from an unknown human colony ship. But according to these records, those artifacts were carbon, dated to be over 500 years old. Roku studied the information carefully. His black eyes reflected the light from the screen. 500 years ago, humans had not even developed faster than light travel according to galactic records. Your species was supposed to be limited to your home solar system until we made contact 50 years ago. That is what I thought too, Minho said. But if these artifacts are real, then humans have been traveling between stars for much longer than anyone knows. Someone has been hiding our real history from both humans and aliens. The question is who and why, Roku said. And, more importantly, who decided that you had to be silenced to keep this secret safe? Their conversation was interrupted by alarms sounding throughout the prison. But these were not the normal feeding time alarms. These were emergency signals that meant something serious was happening. Through their cell's force field door, they could see guards running through the corridors in full combat armor. Other prisoners were being ordered back to their cells immediately. The lights changed from white to red and then to a color that Minho had never seen before. "What is happening?" Minho asked. Before Roku could answer, their cell door opened, and Warden Grix entered with 4 heavily armed guards. Grix was the first alien Minho had seen who looked almost human, except for skin that was gray instead of pink, and eyes that were silver instead of colored. "Prisoner Minho," Grix said, "you will come with us now." "Why?" "Because Admiral Yella of the Hegemony Council has arrived for an inspection. She specifically requested to see you." Minho and Roku exchanged glances. Admiral Yella was the same alien who had been at his trial. If she was here personally, it meant his situation had become much more serious than just a simple imprisonment. They escorted him through corridors he had never seen before. These areas were better maintained and had cleaner air and normal gravity. They were clearly designed for alien officials who could not survive in the main prison areas without assistance. Admiral Yella was waiting in a room that looked like an office transplanted from a space station. She was just as Minho remembered, tall and thin with blue skin that seemed to glow with its own light. But now she looked worried instead of confident. "Leave us alone," she told the guards. "I need to speak with the prisoner privately." The guards hesitated. "Admiral? Security protocols require—" "I said leave us alone," Yella repeated in a voice that made it clear this was not a request. When the guards had left, Yella sat down across from Minho at a metal table. For a long moment, she studied his face as if she was trying to solve a puzzle. "You were supposed to be dead by now," she said finally. "Sorry to disappoint you. Do you have any idea what you have done? What your mere survival in this place has accomplished?" Minho shrugged. "I helped some people. I fixed some equipment. I defended myself when attacked. Nothing special." "Nothing special," Yella repeated. "In 3 months, you have completely destabilized the power structure of the most secure prison in the galaxy. Gang violence is down by 60% because weaker prisoners no longer need protection from the strong. Contraband smuggling has been replaced by legitimate trade networks. The guards report that prisoner cooperation is at an all-time high." "Those sound like good things." "They are terrifying things," Yella said. "Do you understand what happens when the galaxy learns that a single human can do what you have done? When they realize that your species is not the barely civilized barbarians?" "We told them you were." "Maybe they learn the truth," Minho said. "Maybe they find out that humans are stronger and smarter and more adaptable than anyone thought." Yella's blue skin grew brighter with what might have been anger or fear. "The truth is dangerous. The galactic order depends on everyone knowing their place. Humans were supposed to be junior partners at best, useful for manual labor and dangerous tasks, but not real threats to established power." "But we are real threats, are we not?" Minho asked. "That is why you framed me. Because I found evidence that humans have been traveling among the stars much longer than your official history claims." Yella was quiet for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was very soft. "The artifacts you found came from a human colony ship that left Earth 600 years ago. It was destroyed in the Forbidden Nebula when it encountered our forces. During first contact, we have been suppressing evidence of early human expansion ever since. Why? Because if the galaxy knew that humans had developed faster than light travel independently, they would have to be classified as a Class 12 species instead of Class 15. That would give you equal status with the founding members of the hegemony. It would give you territorial claims and voting rights and military authority. And you could not allow that. The Galactic Order has existed for over 1,000 years, Yella said. It has brought peace and prosperity to hundreds of worlds, but it only works because everyone accepts the established hierarchy. If humans suddenly became equals instead of subjects, other species would demand the same treatment. The entire system would collapse. So you decided to commit genocide instead. We decided to manage the truth, Yella corrected. Most humans would never know the difference. Your species would be gradually integrated into galactic society over several generations. By the time you were ready for full membership, the old, territorial claims would be meaningless, except I found proof of your lies. Yes. And now that proof threatens everything we have built. Yella stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the twisted space around the neutron star made everything look like a nightmare painting. I had hoped that sending you here would solve the problem quietly. Your death would be blamed on the harsh conditions and no one would investigate further. But I did not die. No. You thrived. And worse, you proved that humans are exactly as dangerous as we feared they might be. One human turned the worst prison in the galaxy into a functioning society in 3 months. What could 1,000,000 humans do if they put their minds to it? Minho felt pieces of the puzzle clicking together in his mind. You are not here for an inspection. You are here to make sure I never leave this place alive. Yella turned back to face him. I am here to offer you a choice. We can arrange for your death to look like an accident. Something quick and painless. In return, your species will continue to be protected from the truth about their history. Humans will live peaceful lives under our guidance. And if I refuse? Then we implement protocol extinction. The prison's environmental systems will suffer a catastrophic failure. Every prisoner and guard will die in what appears to be a terrible accident. Your death will be lost among thousands of others. You would kill thousands of innocent people just to silence one human? I would kill thousands to prevent a galactic war that could destroy billions, Yella said. The choice is yours, Minho. Die quietly and let your species live in ignorance, or die fighting and take everyone in this prison with you. Minho looked at the alien admiral who held the power of life and death over so many beings. He thought about all the prisoners who had become his friends and allies. He thought about the guards who were just doing their jobs. Roku spread the stolen blueprints across their small table and pointed to a section that looked like a maze of tunnels and chambers. The prison's waste disposal system feeds directly into the neutron star's accretion disk, he said. The materials are broken down at the atomic level and recycled into energy for the station. That does not sound like an escape route, Minho said. That sounds like a very complicated way to commit suicide. For any other species, yes. But humans have something that no other known life form possesses, the ability to survive in conditions that should be instantly fatal. Your cellular structure is more resilient than anything in galactic records. More resilient, maybe, but not indestructible. Roku smiled his strange alien smile. Not indestructible, no, but possibly tough enough to survive a trip through the disposal system if we can modify the process slightly. I have been studying the energy patterns for months. There is a 17-second window during each disposal cycle when the atomic breakdown field is at minimum power. 17 seconds to travel through a system designed to tear apart matter at the molecular level. 17 seconds for you to travel through it. I will not be coming with you. My physiology could not handle even a fraction of that journey. Minho looked at the blueprints more carefully. The disposal system was incredibly complex, but he could see what Roku meant. If someone could time their entry perfectly and move fast enough, they might be able to reach the external disposal port before the breakdown field reached full power. Even if I could survive the trip, how would that help anyone else? Admiral, Yella will still kill everyone in the prison. Not if you can reach her command ship first, Roku said. The ship is docked at the main station hub about 2 kilometers from the disposal port. If you can get aboard and access their communication, Systems. You can broadcast the evidence we have gathered to every major news network in the galaxy. And then? Then the truth about human history becomes public knowledge. The conspiracy collapses. The hegemony loses its justification for treating humans as second-class citizens, and Admiral Yella loses her reason for implementing protocol. Extinction. Minho studied the plans for several more minutes. The escape route was insane, but it might actually work. More importantly, it was the only plan they had. How do we get word to the other prisoners? If I am going to risk my life for this, I want to make sure they know why. Already taken care of, Roku said. While you were meeting with Yella, I used our communication network to send a message to every prisoner leader in Vorthak Prime. They know about protocol extinction and they know about our escape plan. When the time comes, they will be ready to help. 30 minutes later, alarms began sounding throughout the prison again. But this time, it was not an emergency signal. It was the beginning of protocol extinction. Admiral Yella had decided not to wait for Minho's answer. Through their cell door, they could see guards running through the corridors, sealing blast doors and activating emergency protocols. The prisoners were being locked in their cells while automated systems began flooding the lower levels with toxic gas. She is starting early, Roku said. We have perhaps 10 minutes before the main environmental systems fail completely. Then we better move fast. Roku handed Minho a small device that looked like a combination of several different pieces of salvaged technology. This will disrupt the force field on our cell door. Once you are out, follow the route we mapped to the disposal system. I will monitor your progress from here and guide you through the communication system. What about you? You will die when the environmental systems fail. Perhaps. Or perhaps I will find my own way to survive. I am full of surprises. Roku's black eyes seemed to twinkle with hidden knowledge. But right now, your survival is more important than mine. Go! Minho activated the device, and their cell door flickered and went dark. He stepped into the corridor and immediately saw chaos spreading through the prison. Some prisoners were trying to break down their own doors. Others were already out and fighting with guards or each other. The air was getting thicker and harder to breathe as the environmental systems began to fail. He ran through corridors that were becoming more dangerous by the minute. The gravity fluctuated wildly as power was diverted from stabilization systems to life support. Emergency lights flashed in patterns that hurt to look at. But Minho had spent 3 months learning every passage and tunnel in Vorthak Prime. Even in the chaos, he knew exactly where he was going. The entrance to the disposal system was in the deepest part of the prison where the gravity was strongest, and the air was most toxic. Most guards had abandoned this area already, focusing their efforts on containing the uprising in the main cell blocks. Minho reached the disposal chamber just as the system began its next cycle. Through a thick window, he could see the atomic breakdown field building in intensity. It looked like lightning trapped in a bottle, growing brighter and more violent every second. Roku, are you reading me? He said into the communicator. They had built. I am here, came the reply. The cycle is beginning now. You have 43 seconds until the breakdown field reaches minimum power. Are you ready? As ready as anyone can be for something this stupid. Good luck, my friend. Try not to get dissolved. Minho waited until the field reached its lowest ebb and then opened the access hatch. The space beyond was filled with energy that made his skin tingle and his hair stand on end. But it was not immediately lethal. Not yet. He dove into the disposal tube and began moving as fast as he could. The tube was just wide enough for a human body and lined with materials that would have been frictionless if friction still applied. In this environment, he slid through the tube like a bullet through a gun barrel. Behind him, he could feel the breakdown field building in power again. It was like being chased by a wave of pure destruction that would erase him from existence if it caught up. His only advantage was that humans were naturally faster and more agile than most aliens had believed possible. The tube curved and twisted through the station's superstructure. Sometimes he was moving with the artificial gravity and sometimes against it. Sometimes there was no gravity at all and he had to push off the walls to maintain momentum. But always, there was the knowledge that 17 seconds was not very long when measured against the distance he had to travel. He burst out of the disposal port with 3 seconds to spare and immediately found himself floating in space near the main station hub. The neutron star's gravity made everything look warped and strange, but he could see Admiral Yella's command ship docked at the primary airlock. Using techniques he had learned during salvage operations, Minho maneuvered through the vacuum toward the ship. His prison clothes provided no protection against space, but humans could survive in vacuum for several minutes if they did not panic. It was just another hostile environment to adapt to. He reached the ship's emergency airlock and used salvage tools to force it open. Emergency atmosphere flooded the chamber and he could breathe again. But he could also hear alarms sounding throughout the ship as the crew detected his unauthorized boarding. Security guards came running toward the airlock, but Minho was already moving deeper into the ship. He had studied the blueprints of hegemony, command vessels during his salvage career. He knew exactly where the communication center would be located. The guards who tried to stop him learned the same lesson that the prisoners had learned. Humans were much more dangerous than their files indicated. Minho moved through the ship like a force of nature, unstoppable and uncompromising. He reached the communications center and began uploading all the evidence that he and Roku had gathered. Video files showing the conspiracy, audio recordings of Admiral Yella's confession, computer data proving that humans had developed interstellar travel centuries before official first contact. All of it went out on emergency frequencies to every major news network in the galaxy. Admiral Yella burst into the communications center with a squad of heavily armed Marines. "Stop this immediately," she ordered. "You have no idea what you are doing." "I am telling the truth," Minho said. "Something you should have tried from the beginning. The truth will destroy everything we have built. There will be wars. Entire civilizations will fall. Then maybe it is time for something better to take their place." Yella raised her weapon, but before she could fire, explosions began rocking the station. Through the viewports, they could see escape pods launching from Vorthak Prime. The prisoners were escaping in the chaos caused by Protocol Extinction's failure. "How is that possible?" Yella demanded. "You made the same mistake that everyone makes about humans," Minho said. "You underestimated what we can do when we work together. While you were focused on stopping me, the other prisoners were taking over your prison." More explosions shook the station. The prisoners were not just escaping. They were systematically destroying the evidence of what had happened to them. When galactic investigators arrived, they would find nothing but wreckage and conflicting stories. But the truth was already spreading across the galaxy. News networks were broadcasting the evidence that Minho had uploaded. Governments were demanding explanations. Human colonies that had been under hegemony control were declaring independence. "You have doomed us all," Yella said.